why are you poor? Just work harder. I used to think if you lived in the West and you were poor, then you just weren't working hard enough. The classic, just work harder, bro. I realize now that I was incredibly ignorant and that poverty is systemic. Poverty is secondary to wealth inequality at a societal level. And essentially, if you're born poor, you tend to stay poor. The game is rigged. And when you're born poor, you're dealt the worst cards. You begin disadvantaged in the game before you even begin. Before even having an opportunity to make your move, which also inevitably will be more limited compared to those who are the few advantaged players. Welcome to the Squid Game, where for every one person who wins, 999 will lose. It's a lopsided game which is designed to be lopsided. The person who wins is marketed as the poster boy, the classic survivorship bias. If they can make it out, then you should as well. Which in turn means if you didn't make it out, then I guess you're just not good enough. It's your fault and you didn't work hard enough. All while ignoring the inherent unfairness of the game. So what does this mean for you and me? How do we combat this issue? So there's two aspects to this. The societal aspect and you as an individual. And it will require two different approaches. I believe far too much when it comes to the West. There's too much focus on the individual. It's truly like the Squid Games. If I can make it out, then forget about everyone else. As long as I'm the one who's the millionaire in the end, the one who's successful, the one who has money, then I don't care about anyone else. And you even see this within the media. People joke about it like, oh, if I get money, safe, bro, you're not hearing from me anymore. But I think there's an element of truth to it, which is why it resonates with people. There's a lot of truth to jokes. So how do we combat this? At a societal level, I believe we need to recognize what the root issue is. We need to gain class consciousness. And we, the masses, cannot be divided, cannot be told to hate one another. Because the only people that serves are the people who are winning the game, who are having the game rigged in their favor. There's nothing more they'd want to have than have the masses be divided amongst one another, pointing fingers at one another. And we must also recognize that wealth inequality is at the root of the problem. And with how wealth grows, if you think about it in terms of a mathematical model, think back to compound interest. If all your money is in assets, which grow at like 7-8% or something, your wealth is going to grow exponentially over time, right? Which means if there is wealth inequality and the wealth is stored in assets, the wealth inequality is going to grow exponentially over time, which means wealth inequality is going to grow further and further and further. Which means with every subsequent generation, the game is going to become harder and harder and harder. And it's going to become more and more rigged in their favor. So in terms of at a societal level, I think that's one of the key things we need to be focusing on. Recognizing the wealth inequality. It serves those who are richest to keep the masses divided. Because by allowing the masses to be divided, it means the wealth inequality will remain, which works in their favor. They grow wealthier and wealthier over time. And if billionaires can convince you that the reason why you're poor is because of that refugee who's coming in a boat and not the person who's buying up your homes, then it will allow them to keep their position of power. So in that sense, we need to ensure that we gain class consciousness. And we need to recognize what the true root of the problem is. What about in terms of the individual level? What is it that you need to be doing? I would argue, whilst we have to fight against the wealth inequality at an individual level, you really have to try your best. You need to recognize that no one is coming to save you. my generation, especially now, the time period when we're graduating university, we're trying to get jobs, you look around and everything's so expensive. Everything's a lot harder than I even remember when I was in primary school. Wages have stagnated, yet the cost of living is increasing more and more and more, which makes it incredibly difficult for us as young people, which means we have to fight against the inequality that's occurring. But it also means you really have to put your best foot forward. There's not going to be any handouts. And whilst it's not fair that a person who grew up in a wealthy family and attended the best universities and had the best tutors and was practically given a job and position and inheritance, etc., whilst you were given nothing and you have to fight for everything, whilst that is unfair, no doubt, that is the reality of the situation. So I believe as young people, we really need to be striving harder and harder and harder, while simultaneously, actively fighting against the wealth inequality that's occurring. So I believe it's two battles we need to fight. Putting yourself in the best position you can in terms of yourself and your family financially, whilst also recognizing that the reason why you're having to struggle so hard is because of the wealth inequality, and fighting against that as well. So if we go back to the Squid Game analogy, we need to be fighting two battles. Number one, trying your best to stay alive by winning whatever game you're participating in as much as you possibly can, whilst also recognizing that the game is rigged and the vast majority of people are going to die, which means you need to somehow exit the game or change the rules of the game. So you need to be fighting two battles at the same time.